Thank you so much, dear friends, Emmanuel, Kira, Friedrich, Marco, Mr. Secretary, and Antonio, Ursula, and of course, all the leaders of the coalition. Truly appreciate that you all stand with us, with Ukraine, and that we are working together for our shared security. Right now, when it comes to security, there is nothing to divide between us, and there are no separate issues. Everything affects all of us, and everyone needs to be fully informed. We firmly believe security decisions about Ukraine must include Ukraine. That was our position in Geneva, and always security decisions about Europe must include Europe, and the same applies to Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, other countries, and every nation. And this is simply fair, and it actually works, because when something is decided behind the back of the country or its people, there is always a high risk that it simply will not work. And we all believe that people should decide their own future, and this is in particular what sets us apart from regimes like the one in Moscow. So thank you all for moving forward together and staying coordinated and united. Friends, now we have a good result from Geneva, and from the meetings and talks that took place there, Ukraine has the framework developed by our teams in Geneva. That framework is on the table, and we are ready to move forward together with the United States of America, with personal engagement of President Trump, and with Europe, with leaders, and with all partners who have their strengths and capacity to help. And I'm ready to meet with President Trump, and there are sensitive points to discuss. We have them still, and we think that the presence of European leaders could be helpful. And let's discuss some key issues today in a closed format. But we must also not lose sight of reality. Russia's war against us is not in the past. It's happening every single day. Every day Russia takes Ukrainian lives. Just last night, thanks for warm words and the words of support from you, friends. So last night there was yet another massive attack on our country, so we cannot relax or forget that Ukraine still needs defense support, security support, support of our resilience every day. And as long as Russia has not taken real steps toward demobilization, real steps to shut down its war machine, steps that would clearly show that Russia is serious about ending this war of aggression, we do not have the right to stop working to support Ukraine, to support our people, and to support our collective security, and we do not have the right to demobilize ourselves. We must protect lives, strengthen air defense, and hold the front line, keep sanctions against Russia, finally channel frozen Russian assets to bolster Ukraine protection, and work out finally the doable framework for the deployment of the reassurance force Ukraine of the coalition of the willing by signing of a relevant memorandum of understanding. Please let us keep working at 100% for security as we have before. And thank you so much.
Dear Volodymyr, dear all, many thanks for finding the time once again for this new meeting of the Coalition of the Willing that we will co-chair with Keir and Friedrich. And I'm glad that we are joined today by Secretary of State Marco Rubio of the United States. He will connect in a few minutes on our VTC. I would like to welcome the fact that the Geneva meetings on the 23rd of November allowed for an open and constructive discussion between Ukraine and the United States, and that both parties deemed it a significant step forward. Together as members of the coalition, which brings 35 countries, European partners, NATO allies, and supporters of Ukraine, plus the European institutions and NATO Secretary General, and Secure is here as well with the Secretary General. We've always expressed our support to the American efforts to put an end to this war. And we are united in support for a just, dignified, and lasting peace for Ukraine that would preserve its sovereignty and ensure its long-term security. Any step that is taking us further down this path is a welcome step. It was particularly important in my view that Europeans and allies were also present in Geneva and able to make their views known. And decisions with implications for Europe and NATO interests need the joint support of European partners and NATO allies respectively. And we are all very clear on that. And obviously, I'm not forgetting our friends from Japan, Australia, New Zealand, who are staunch partner for Ukraine and also share our determination to make sure that any peace deal strengthens our rule-based order and not undermine it further. We are clearly at a crucial juncture. Negotiations are getting a new impetus, and we should seize this momentum, not because there is reason for alarm, Ukraine is solid, Russia is slow, and Europe is steadfast, but because there is finally a chance to make real progress toward a good peace. But the absolute condition for a good peace is a set of very robust security guarantees and not paper guarantees. Ukraine has had its share of promises that were shattered by successive Russian aggressions, and real, rock-solid guarantees are a necessity. And this is, I would say, the core mission of this coalition of the willing. So I suggest to divide our meeting into two parts, if you agree. I will give the floor to Keir right now, and after that, perhaps we could have an intervention from Volodymyr to debrief us about the discussions in Geneva and the state of the art of the discussion. And second, we could focus on how the coalition can best contribute in this context to provide those robust security guarantees for Ukraine. And we could conclude with the next steps, if you all agree.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, and I hope you can all hear me all right. And thank you, Volodymyr, for being with us. And I think Marco is joining us, as you say, Emmanuel, in just a little while. And I'm really conscious that as we meet today, and it's a good thing we is, Kyiv is recovering from another barrage last night with more civilian homes in ruins and more innocent lives lost. Another repulsive act, another reminder for all of us, if we needed it, as to why we must come together. Because what we all want to see, and these are the guiding principles, particularly in recent days, is a permanent end to Russia's barbarity in Ukraine and a just and lasting peace. And as all colleagues on the Coalition of the Willing know, both of those words, just and lasting, are hugely important. And of course, that is what the US is working for. And I welcome the fact that progress is being made, and remind ourselves that no one wants peace more than Volodymyr and the Ukrainian people, who've paid a very heavy price for Russia's aggression over a very long period now. And so the talks in Geneva, Emmanuel, were, as you say, good. Progress was made, and I welcome some of the developments that have now come forward. It was a chance to ensure that the draft plan fully reflects Ukraine's interests and lays the ground for a lasting peace. Now, Volodymyr's team, and I think Volodymyr will speak in just a moment, so we'll hear directly from him, and I spoke to him this morning, but they proposed some constructive changes, and of course, some of our national security advisors were there in Geneva to support the talks. So I do think we're moving in a positive direction, and indications today that in large part the majority of the text looks as though Volodymyr is indicating can be accepted. But I would just like to make just a few points about the next steps against that context. First, we do need to continue to support these negotiations and be really clear about the fundamental principles that basically have driven this coalition of willing in the 9 months since we set it up. We're 9 months on. We have now 36 countries, I think, Volodymyr, that are Emmanuel and Volodymyr, that are now involved in this. And the principles we've always been driven by are Ukraine should be able to defend itself in the future, hugely important. Ukraine's sovereignty must be maintained, and that matters about Ukraine and its future must be determined by Ukraine. They're the driving principles of this coalition of the willing, driving principles, to my mind, in the negotiations. And of course, our US friends recognise that elements relating to Europe and NATO need the consent of Europe and NATO members. Secondly, we should keep up our work on preparing robust security guarantees. As Emmanuel has said, that's the driving purpose behind this coalition. And security guarantees was an important element of the draft US plan, because Ukraine needs real assurance that Russia cannot come again in the future. And so when we say peace, and it must be lasting peace, that will not happen if we don't have robust security guarantees. So we need to prepare the planning and financing to build Ukraine's future force so it can defend itself. The multinational force Ukraine will be a vital part of this. Our military planners who've worked really hard in recent months will continue to work on the readiness of that force. And I urge colleagues on the call this afternoon to firm up their national commitments, because we need to ensure we've got the most robust capability, most robust plans on the table. And we will also pick up next steps with the US military on their own planning. And we must come back to this with a strong political guarantee to show Russia we're serious about responding to any violation. And it's only if Russia believes we're serious to responding to any violation that this will underpin a lasting peace. And again, it's great that the US have made progress on drafting this in recent days. Third point, we need to keep the pressure on Russia. We must move forward with a full embargo of Russian energy. We know, and we shouldn't underestimate, that the measures that we've taken over the last few weeks alone have already had an impact, including the most recent US sanctions on oil majors. This is some of the most significant developments in terms of sanctions in recent weeks, and that has caused real damage to the Russian economy. Finally, and crucially, and I know I've said this a number of times before, colleagues, but we must never lose sight as we strive for a ceasefire and a just and lasting peace, that we must support Ukraine right now. It is a big mistake, in my view, to take our eye off the ball and to focus only on the future. We must support Ukraine now. So even as we work towards peace, and we are, there can be no letting up of support to keep Ukraine in the fight. And that requires urgent solutions on things like financing and capability. And I know on financing, Ursula and Antonio's teams are working pretty well around the clock now. We're really thankful to them for everything they're putting in on this. And I know that EU leaders are looking at this in the next few weeks, where progress is being made. We, the UK, are ready to move with the EU on providing financial support based on the value of the immobilized assets. This is the best way to show Putin he should negotiate rather than trying to outweight us. And it's the best way for us to be ready to support Ukraine in war or in peace. And of course, we need to keep supporting Ukraine's defense. Ukraine is holding the line fearlessly, and it's the line of their sovereignty and their defense, but it's also our line as well, because this is about European freedom, our values and our security. So they need our support, and more support now, to defend their people, their cities and their infrastructure, whether that's energy or civilian. And we've all seen the attacks that continue day after day, night after night, particularly intense in the last week or so. And so the UK will deliver more air defence missiles in the coming week. And I urge everyone in that spirit to dig deep and see what more support you can provide, particularly now as we go into the winter. So, Emmanuel, that's the framing principles and the immediate steps as I see it. And I look forward to the contributions of other colleagues and thank other colleagues. It is remarkable that we've got such a large group of countries working together in this way with a real unity of purpose, which is needed at this critical point, just as much as it's been needed over the last 9 months since we set this group up. So thank you, colleagues, and I very much look forward to hearing the contributions of others.